We are in conversation with Dr. Chris Jones, literally like a whole rocket scientist who could have been governor of Arkansas had the racism. That's what I'm calling it. Those are my words, not his. But there's still a lot happening when it comes to the
Yeah.
political environment in the state of Arkansas, and you all are still in the hot seat when it comes to redistricting. What's going on with y'all's maps? Because the maps in New York are quite frankly fugazi right now. We got to go back into
Hmm.
redrawing. What are you all experiencing with redistricting in Arkansas? And for those who are listening to a redistricting conversation for the first time, just a reminder, redistricting is the map or is the process of drawing the maps to determine who you vote with and how much strength your vote actually has. If your district has way more people in it than do other neighboring districts, then you have been packed together in some ways that frankly can be dilutive of your voting power. So Dr. Chris Jones,
Yeah.
what's happening with redistricting in the state of Arkansas?
Yeah. To your point on first principles, right? The guiding principle of redistricting was to make sure that there was fairly equal representation, right? So every set of X number of people get to have a representative. And so you sort of move that. That's the foundational principle. What folks have used that they use that to then decide, again, go back to power, who gets to
That's right.
decide. They use their power to decide that instead of just equally, equitably, fairly assigning tranches of people, I'm going to choose my voters. And so in the case of Arkansas, what they did in the last cycle, and this is really solely motivated by the fact that our congressman in the second congressional district, French Hill, it was getting closer and closer to him getting beat.
Wow.
So right. So had it not been for redistricting, that might have been the year that he got beat. Because folks were turning out and it was a closer and closer vote. And so what they said was, hey, why don't we take the city of Little Rock, which is in the center of Arkansas, and instead of leaving it all in the second congressional, we're going to take 41,000 Black folks from South
Oh
Little Rock
man.
and put them
Come on.
into the fourth congressional. And then we're going to grab 41,000 folks from the first congressional who happen to not look like the folks in South Little Rock.
Mm.
And we're going to bring them into the district. So that's what they did. Now,
Wow.
interestingly, and I'll say this, and we'll come back to this later. One of the things I did in the time that I've had, having not been the governor, is to co-found an organization called Vortex. And
Huh.
Vortex PAC set out to identify four solid candidates for our four congressional districts in Arkansas.
That's
Because we didn't
fantastic.
want to say, hey, let's just find one candidate and then we have to worry about, well, are there voters here, voters there? No, no. We found four candidates
Right.
and we have a Black woman running in the fourth congressional district, which is where they put those 41,000 Black folks. So it could turn out to backfire on them.
Huh.
That
I
being
love
said,
it.
like let's play some chess here. Uh,
Yeah.
so if they don't change if they don't make us redraw the maps, which they've done in Alabama and New York and North
Yeah.
Carolina, some other places, then we got those 41,000 in the fourth congressional. If they do, what then has to happen is they have to go back and really draw the maps more fairly. There were two cases that were moving forward in Arkansas, and one of the cases just had a hearing. They have to submit discovery at the top of the year next year. So fingers are crossed that the second congressional district, which is in central Arkansas, will see more fair representation, similar
Mm.
to what we're starting to see in places like Alabama and the like.
Now, are you all a part of the state configure? There are several states right now where there's a question as to whether or not individuals are able to move forward with voting rights claims under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Do you know if that implicates Arkansas as well, or because it was like state? I believe I can't remember which circuit it was. This came down
Yeah,
like maybe a week and a half ago. Is that
yeah,
going to have negative implications for you all?
that was one of the two cases for us,
Ah,
right?
okay, all right.
So, but again, there's another case, which it blows my mind that on the one hand, you don't have standing
Mm,
as an organization to represent a set of people who have been disenfranchised. But on the
mm.
other hand, if I hypothetically might make a cake for an LGBTQ couple, then I have standing in that case. It's like, come on,
Right.
y'all. You can't have it both ways.
If
And
one
I'm
day
referring to the
I might
Supreme Court
decide to
case.
make a
I might
website
decide to
for
make a
gay
website.
people, I might want the ability to discriminate, and I need protection from the courts to be able to do
Yeah.
that. It's kind of like in the state of Texas. Every fetus is viable and every fetus is a life from the beginning, and we protect it. There's no such thing as abortion, unless, of course, you're a state employee, like a corrections
Yeah.
officer, who was not allowed to go to the hospital as she was in the throes of miscarriage and ends up losing the baby, a baby that she very much wanted. And in that case, Ken Paxton, the attorney general, was like, oh, it's not a
Uh,
fetus. It's not a baby, it's a fetus. And the
right.
fetuses are not, yeah, the
Yeah.
hypocrisy.
It's a hot mess.
It is. It is. Well, so if either way, it looks like you all have had some foresight that would allow you to hedge your bets and when it
Yeah.
comes to dealing with the redistricting fallout. So if they continue with the bad maps, you have some plans and contingencies there.
We
And if
have somebody. Yep.
they don't, then you at least have a shot at more equitable representation, which
Yeah.
brings us back to the pack that you started, because we're not
Mhm.
just talking about registering people to vote. And registering people to vote is extraordinarily important. But in the state of New York, I once heard Dr. Hazel Dukes, who is the president of the NAACP, the state conference for the New York NAACP, she once said, forget registering more people, because that's what the whole conversation in that space was. She was like, what about activating the people who have already been registered? Let's think
Yeah.
about this more expansively.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds like with the creation of this pack, you all are thinking much more expansively than just registering to vote, getting a candidate here or there. Give us some sense as to what was behind the formulation of this pack and what the goals are.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer, so I always look for what's the problem and how do we solve it. And I will say this in context. When I ran, I outperformed every other statewide Democrat. And by the way, Sarah underperformed every other statewide Republican. Just want to put that out
Ooh,
there. Right.
that's why y'all got a $19,000 podium,
Right.
and
Hello. Hello.
and then no, nothing really happened.
Nothing really happened. So what we realized though is that one of the challenges to getting people turned out to vote is they don't see themselves represented. They don't have anyone coming to them. And we had a candidate quality issue in the last cycle. One of our Democratic nominees for Congress was an election denier.
Oh, brother.
Right.
Wow.
So it came to a point to where the Democratic Party literally had to take him off of the flyers and banners.
Oh my God.
That suppresses turnout. So
Right.
we said, why don't we can't focus on every race,
Right.
but if we focus on the four congressional candidates, we can do a couple things. One, we can give each district real solid representation. Number
Mm,
two, we can go back to this question that you said, who's making the decisions? Who's
right.
answering the question? Because usually it's a smoke-filled room where some folks have their cigars and they say, all right, well, I want Lurie to run for this office and I want Chris to run for that office, and let's make it happen. Usually they don't look like us. We
That's right.
said, let's take the smoke-filled rooms and bring it into the community. So we created the first in the nation nominate your neighbor process, where we
Oh,
asked our
wait, now what is this?
come
This
on
is
now,
exciting.
we asked our Kansans to think about who would they get excited to vote for Congress, and
Wow.
then submit that name. We vetted them, we called them, we talked them through it, and we ended up endorsing four out of the, we thought we'd get 40 nominations. We got over 80 nominations
Oh my God.
across the whole state. And we vetted for, but here's the unintended benefit. The other challenge we faced when I ran was that we had the lowest number of candidates, Democratic candidates, for state legislative races when I ran in the
Mm,
last decade. This
okay.
year, we have the highest number of state legislative candidates than we've had in over a decade, in part
That's
because
incredible.
Vortex went around the state and said, hey, be enter the process. Don't wait to just vote. Don't wait to just volunteer. You
Mm,
decide who you want to be on the ballot in the first place. So that
mm,
got people excited. And in the
yes.
process, the folks we didn't choose, we said, look, you might not be right for Congress, US Congress, but what about state rep? What about justice of the peace?
That-
What about school board? And so they started standing up and saying, you know what? I think I can do this. Now, it helps that we have a current governor who is mean and a grifter and created this education platform that's literally going to close rural schools and upend education and bankrupt the state if we don't do something about it. That helps.
Yeah.
But
And don't
it
forget
was
she's
really,
lazy too. I want to
oh,
make sure
oh
we keep in
yeah,
that
yeah,
because
yeah, get that
you know who
laziness in.
often gets called lazy. We want to make sure that
Yeah.
lazy label sticks.
I'm
Yes.
like, can you do your homework, please? Wait a minute, let me stop. So, what part of what Vortex did was engage those folks, give them a pathway. And now we're entering the phase, we have our 4 candidates. We're going to start training campaign staff and volunteers.
Dr. Jones, y'all just created a whole ass pipeline. You went from having the fewest number of candidates at the state level to creating a pipeline and community buy-in all through asking the community what they wanted. It's almost as if you understand community organizing at
Imagine
the
that.
political level. Wait, Amina, that's round of applause worthy. That's absolutely brilliant structurally,
Appreciate it.
organizationally, in terms of execution. That is freaking awesome, dude.
Appreciate
That
it.
is amazing because it sounds like you all are doing, you know how everyone talks about Stacey Abrams, and I love that sister.
Yeah.
The work that she did in Georgia, and not just her, but the organizations that she helped to build. It sounds, and people would often say, well, how come we can't get in blank state what they got in Georgia? It feels like y'all were answered the call and was like, hold my beer. Like,
Yeah.
what we gonna do is build it from the ground up. How does that work? How do you go about creating a pack? Because I know people are like, well, wait a minute, hold on now. We want a national, we want a statewide
Mhm.
nominating process. Give us some insight into the mechanics that went into making this happen. But first of all, where did the idea come from?
So the idea was birthed in a coffee shop.
Oh,
And yeah, me and one other individual from the campaign, we sort of reflected on, I believe in reflection and think what worked, what didn't work, what we do differently, what are the challenges, and literally as we were leaving the coffee shop in the threshold, and he says his wife is it sort of has this moniker that thresholds are are places of transition.
mm.
So when you go through a threshold, you're transitioning from one space to another space. And in that threshold, we said, well, what if we engage people earlier? And that was where Vortex was born in the threshold of a coffee shop. But I'll tell you this: it's not just Vortex that's doing the work. And folks can find out more about Vortex by going to vortexpac.com, vortexpac.com. And we're happy to help. We're an open book because this is about saving democracy, not about lifting up Chris Jones or any other person. And we have to do this work together.
That's
The Democratic Party of Arkansas also took a shift. And when I launched my campaign, the Democratic Party of Arkansas was $300,000 in debt.
oh,
And there were some really good people working and doing the best they could, but because of a number of different reasons, it wasn't producing anything. Now the Democratic Party of Arkansas has $300,000 in the bank, and they're
well,
supporting
all
candidates
right,
and they're
turning
doing the
water
work.
into wine.
I mean, let's go, let's go.
Huh.
And it is certainly a function of the work that I've done that we're doing. It is also a function of Arkansans, well, one, seeing that something else is possible. And I
Mm,
believe our campaign did that. My campaign for governor helped people to believe again, help people to see that something else is possible. We broke ground. And then
mm,
having a tangible pathway to engage. So you don't just get people excited and then walk away. You get them excited and say, here's a pathway to do something.
right.
And then working collectively, right? Because I'm constantly like, hey, we need one goal. And I'll be very transparent. All
Mm.
the groups in Arkansas that are doing this work know. Do everything you do, but our one common goal is to break the supermajority in Arkansas.
Oh,
And
focus.
and one goal, and we need 8 seats to break the supermajority. If we break the supermajority, we have some say as to where the money goes.
Mm. I
So
wish we could nationalize that because I want us to have a singular focus on getting 60 votes in the Senate. Like I want to have a
yeah,
singular focus because we can do all the things we got. I love the congressional. I believe we'll be able to retake the House, particularly if certain states get their acts together when it comes to the maps that they draw, but that's another conversation for another day. But I want us to have that sort of focus on we need
Yeah.
8 more or however many more candidates in the Senate, so we are going to be able. What did we have? 51, 50. We need that many.
Yeah.
We need
We need
between
that many.
what we
Yep.
got now and 60 in order to be able to move forward. Right now, we're just treading water, and that's
Yeah.
of singular focus that I want to be able to nationalize, at least in terms of the conversations that we're having. This is fantastic.
Well, I can tell you how we can do it at the state legislative space. So
Mm,
if you think about it, there are roughly 20 some odd states that have Republican supermajority that is less than a 20-seat supermajority.
wow.
There are about probably 10 or so, roughly 10, that have a Republican supermajority that's within 10 seats.
Mm,
So imagine if we got 1,000 people
this is doable.
to give $100 a month.
Yeah.
And on the first of the month, we said, all right, Alabama, there are 10 seats in Alabama. I want 1,000 people to give $100 to these 10 seats.
Wow. Mm,
And if we did that for 10 months and we pick a different state each month, because in some of these state legislative seats, there's a guy, and I'll tell you this young woman's name. Her name is Whitney Freeman. She answered the call. She's a community activist. There was her state representative is he's arrogant.
mm,
He has not had an opponent.
mm.
And in the last cycle, he only raised $7,000.
Are you serious?
Right. We think it's like astronomical.
God.
So now
Wow.
imagine if all of a sudden in February of next year, Whitney Freeman received from 1,000 people $100
Right.
because
Right.
it was her month. Now you just changed the landscape.
Mm, mm.
Even if she
My
received
God.
$10,000, you just
Right.
changed the landscape for her because in
Right.
one single month, she outraised her opponent. Because at the end of the day, it's about money. And so I want to get some of these races that 10, 15, $20,000 races. Let's
Mm,
collectively come together and pool our money and
yeah.
support these races. And then we can break the back of the supermajority. Because once you break the back of the supermajority, now you can begin to start to play in a better way. It also gives
Right.
people a sense of I can actually win.
Yes. And you got to have a sense of the win. A lot of times we're asking people to fight for things that they haven't seen a win in so long that the
Yeah.
idea of continuing to fight feels burdensome. We're actually doing something similar here on Urban View, not necessarily with the political arena, although I'm thinking, we're taking in 2024 each month, we're asking Urban View to make a collective donation to one organization. Not that you
Oh, I
can't keep
like
donating
that.
to others, but going to
Yeah.
one organization so that we Urban View are funding this particular institution for, and how, let's say if we had 1,000 people giving $100, then that institution is now able to have non-discretionary funds that they can use in a
Yes.
way that's going to benefit them. If we were to also have that in a political space, and y'all listen, not everybody has to do everything. Maybe you can't do $100 a month, but you could do
It's fine.
10. Maybe you could
Yep.
just do $1. I will tell you some of the donations that make me the happiest, because still in active fundraising for the Law Center at Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College. When I see people who go online and they submit a $5 donation,
Oh my
obviously I
goodness.
want a
Right.
5,000, 50,000. I want a $5 million donation, of course. But if you can give $5 and
Yeah.
that's all you have, it's like the story in the Bible with
It's
the woman who
biblical. It's
had the
biblical.
two
There you go.
mites. It means so much
So
because I
much.
know it's a struggle and it's
Hmm.
that much more appreciative. Chris Jones, give us the websites on how people can learn more about Vortex. I believe
Yeah.
you said it was vortexpack.com. We're
Yep.
literally at the end of the segment today.
VortexPAC.com.
I'm so glad we were able to create this whole hour because I knew we was going to
Yeah.
have to touch on a whole lot of different points.
Yeah. And next time I come back, I got to talk about my devotional.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the devotional. Actually, can you give us a 30-second context for what the
Yeah. It's
devotional is? I
it's
want
it's
people to have
called
some
Quantum.
clues at the beginning of the year.
The quick version is called Quantum Pearls. Folks can get it. It's on Amazon, and it's a 30-day devotional, and it's really about finding dense packets of spiritual wisdom in everyday life. So you don't
Ooh,
have to go to a 40-day yoga retreat. You don't have to, do some fasting for 800 days. But if I just go to the restaurant and there's a devotional called Juicy Fried Chicken Breast, where I'm talking about my experience at a soul food restaurant. while you're on the airplane. Like all these moments happen in life, and you can find packets of spiritual wisdom, dense packets, which I call pearls. So Quantum Pearls is the book, and
Pearl.
it's bookstores, Amazon, Walmart, Books A Million,
We're gonna
you
tweet
name
it
it.
out. I'm dropping it in the chat as well. Literally, you have talked us to the last 30 seconds of the show. He is Dr. Chris Jones, and you're going to hear him back on these airways because we need to unpack this more, sir. I need you to have you come back in January
Hey,
so we
I'm
can do
here.
some more of this unpacking. I want to tease out the science behind all the things that you're doing. Really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you
Appreciate
so
you.
much.
Love my Urban View family.